The news hit America like a thunderclap. Charlie Kirk, the young conservative activist who built Turning Point USA and stood close to Trump's base, was suddenly gone. His death wasn't just another headline, it became a spark, tearing through the already divided country. Supporters mourned, critics questioned, and whispers about responsibility filled the air. But it was what happened next that left millions in stunned silence. Bernie Sanders, the longtime senator from Vermont and one of the most outspoken critics of Donald Trump, stepped forward. He didn't speak with the coldness of politics. His voice carried grief, but also something deeper, fury mixed with sorrow. Standing before a crowd still reeling, Bernie didn't mince words. Looking straight into the cameras, he said firmly, "Donald Trump, you fueled this. You created the fire that consumed this man's life." The crowd gasped. Few expected Bernie, often measured, to unleash such a direct accusation. Yet his words didn't come from spite. They came from decades of warning America about division, hatred, and the dangerous politics of fear. But then came the twist. Instead of lashing out, Trump shocked everyone by pausing in silence. For the first time, the man known for never backing down seemed caught off guard. His lips tightened, his eyes briefly lowered. Was it guilt? Was it strategy? No one knew. The room felt suspended in time. Bernie didn't let the silence end there. He leaned forward, voice breaking yet steady. "Charlie was not my ally. We disagreed on nearly everything, but he was young. He was somebody's son. And he died in a climate poisoned by hate, a climate you encouraged." Mothers in the audience began to cry. Even those who once supported Trump shifted uneasily. Bernie wasn't just blaming. He was grieving. And that grief reached deep into the hearts of Americans who had lost too many to division. Then, an unexpected emotional shift unfolded. A Republican senator in attendance, known for his loyalty to Trump, quietly lowered his head and placed a hand over his heart. The cameras caught it, and instantly the nation wondered, was this the beginning of cracks forming in Trump's own circle? The air grew heavier. Trump raised his hand to speak, but before he could, Bernie cut in with one final piercing line. "This is not about winning or losing. It's about the soul of America. And I will not stay silent while more lives are lost." The crowd erupted, some in applause, others in outrage. The tension was unbearable. Trump's face hardened, and just as he opened his mouth to deliver what many expected to be a fiery counterattack, the screen cut to black, and America waited. The silence didn't last long. When the cameras cut back, Donald Trump finally spoke. His voice was sharp, his jaw tight. "Bernie Sanders," he said, "how dare you blame me for Charlie's death? I had nothing to do with it. This is politics at its ugliest." The crowd roared, some clapping, others shouting in protest. Trump leaned harder on the podium, his words pushing blame outward. Charlie Kirk was a fighter. He stood for freedom. And if you want to dishonor him by turning his death into a weapon, that's on you, Bernie, not on me. But Bernie didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed, his voice steady, louder now. "No, Mr. Trump. You can run from responsibility, but you cannot hide from the truth. Charlie lived in the world you helped create, a world where anger is rewarded and compassion is mocked. That climate suffocated him, and you know it." For a moment, Trump smirked, almost dismissive. But then Bernie did something unexpected, something that stunned even his supporters. He pulled out a printed statement, the very last public post Charlie Kirk had made before his death. Bernie's hands trembled slightly as he read aloud. "I feel like we're drowning in rage. I'm surrounded by people who love fighting more than living. And I wonder if this is what America has become." Gasps filled the air. It wasn't Bernie's voice anymore that cut the room. It was Charlie's. His own words, echoing from the grave, stripped away politics and laid bare a cry for help that had gone unnoticed. Trump's smirk faded. His shoulders stiffened. The crowd grew restless, shifting uneasily, sensing something raw and real was happening. Bernie's tone softened but carried even more power. "This is not just about Charlie. This is about all of us. How many more young people will we lose before we admit that words have consequences? How many more will feel crushed by the weight of this division? Suddenly, the unexpected shift came. A woman in the front row stood up, tears streaming down her face. She clutched a small photo frame, her son, who had taken his life last year. Her voice cracked as she cried out, "My boy felt the same way Charlie did. He was only 19. He said the hate in this country was too much, and he's gone because nobody listened." The room froze. Even Trump turned, stunned by the raw grief spilling into the open. The cameras zoomed in, the woman sobbing uncontrollably as others reached to comfort her. Bernie walked down from the stage and put his arm around her shoulders. His voice broke. "You are not alone, and we will not let your son's death be ignored." The entire room, supporters, critics, even hardened politicians, sat in heavy silence. Trump cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Look, tragedies happen," he said, his tone defensive. "But blaming me, blaming politics, that's not the answer. That's not fair." Bernie lifted his head, staring back at Trump with fire in his eyes. Fair? What's not fair is young lives cut short because leaders refuse to take responsibility. What's not fair is mothers burying their children while those in power look away. The clash was reaching a boiling point. Trump's hand gripped the podium as if ready to strike back harder than before. But before he could speak, Bernie delivered a final blow for the night. "If you won't own your part in this, then the American people will decide whether you ever deserve to lead again." The crowd exploded, half in cheers, half in rage. The battle lines had been drawn. The crowd's roar hadn't even faded when Trump leaned forward, his face dark with anger. His voice rose above the noise. "Bernie, you're the one dividing this country. You stand here exploiting Charlie's death for your own gain. Shame on you." Gasps rippled through the room. Trump's words were sharp, but there was something more in his tone. Desperation. He wasn't just defending himself, he was fighting to hold the crowd. Bernie raised a hand, signaling for quiet. His calmness against Trump's fury drew the audience closer, like a storm against still water. "No, Mr. Trump," Bernie said firmly. "This is not exploitation, this is truth, and sometimes the truth hurts." But Trump wasn't finished. He pulled a paper from his jacket, a transcript of Bernie's past speeches. Waving it in the air, he thundered, "You talk about unity, Bernie, but here you are, calling conservatives the enemy. You sow division just like you accuse me of. You are no better." The audience erupted again. For the first time, Bernie looked momentarily shaken. The twist was real. Trump had flipped the accusation back at him. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the tension etched across Bernie's face. But then came the emotional shift no one expected. Bernie didn't defend himself. Instead, he nodded slowly, almost painfully. "You're right," he admitted. "I have spoken in anger. I have called people enemies when I should have called them brothers and sisters. I am not perfect." The room fell into stunned silence. Bernie, admitting fault, didn't weaken his message. It made him stronger. His humility cut deeper than any attack. Mothers in the crowd began to nod through tears. Even some Trump supporters froze, unsure how to react. Bernie's voice cracked but grew louder. "Yes, I have failed at times. But the difference, Mr. Trump, is that when I fail, I take responsibility. I learn. I change. Can you say the same?" Trump's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, his confidence faltered. The silence stretched, and the weight of it pressed down on everyone watching. Then, from the back of the room, another unexpected twist. A young man stepped forward. His voice trembled but carried across the hall. "Senator Sanders, I was part of Turning Point USA. I worked with Charlie, and I can tell you he felt trapped. He wanted to speak out against the hate, but he was scared. He thought he'd lose everything if he did." Every head turned. The revelation was explosive. It wasn't just Bernie saying it anymore, it was someone who had lived inside Charlie's world. The young man's eyes glistened as he added, "Charlie admired your honesty, Senator." He said once that even if he hated your politics, at least you told the truth. That's more than he could say about the people closest to him. The room broke into whispers, the weight of those words striking like thunder. Trump's fists clenched against the podium, but his silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. Bernie walked toward the young man, placing a hand on his shoulder. His voice carried the room. "Thank you for your courage. Charlie's voice will not be lost, not while we are still breathing." The crowd erupted in applause and sobs. Trump stood frozen, his face red with fury, but his words swallowed by the moment. The applause was deafening, but Trump wasn't about to let the moment slip away. He slammed his hand against the podium, his voice cutting through the cheers. "Enough of this nonsense. You think Bernie Sanders is some saint? You think he's clean? Let me remind everyone who he really is." The room stilled. Trump pulled out a stack of papers, waving them like evidence. "This man has been in Washington for decades. And what has he done? He talks about helping the people, but look at his record. Taxes, regulations, failures. He's no hero. He's part of the problem." A wave of boos and cheers collided in the hall. For the first time, Trump's supporters felt a surge of energy, chanting his name. But Bernie didn't flinch. His eyes locked on Trump, steady, calm, unshaken. Then Trump dropped the bomb. "And don't forget, Bernie, you once admitted your own campaign workers were treated unfairly. You, Mr. Sanders, underpaid them while preaching fairness. Hypocrisy at its finest." Gasps erupted. The attack was sharp, personal, and real. For a moment, the energy shifted. Some in the crowd turned to Bernie, waiting. Was this true? Bernie lowered his head, the weight of Trump's words heavy. Then he lifted his gaze, his voice raw and unguarded. "Yes, that happened. My campaign failed some of its workers, and when I learned it, I raised their pay. I corrected the mistake. Because real leadership is not about pretending to be perfect, it's about fixing what is broken." The hall fell silent again. The unexpected twist, Bernie owning his flaws, didn't weaken him. It made him human. Trump's attempt to wound him instead opened a deeper emotional current in the room. And then came another shock. From the side of the stage, Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey, rose to speak. He hadn't been expected to take the floor, but the tension drew him in. His voice carried with urgency. "I was there. I watched Bernie raise those wages. I watched him fight to correct it. That's leadership. And I'll tell you this. The American people deserve leaders who can admit mistakes, not leaders who bury them." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, many rising to their feet. Trump's face hardened, his frustration boiling over. He shouted into the mic, "You're all blind. You're letting him manipulate you with tears and fake apologies. This is politics and he's playing you like a fiddle." But his words rang hollow against the emotion swelling in the room. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Veterans stood with tears in their eyes. Even some conservatives shifted uncomfortably, torn between loyalty and conscience. Bernie stepped forward, his voice rising over the chaos. "This is not about me, Donald. This is about the future of this country. Charlie Kirk's death is a warning that hate is a poison, and until leaders like you stop feeding it, America will keep bleeding." The crowd's energy surged once more, drowning Trump's protests in a wave of raw emotion. But just as the night seemed to be closing in Bernie's favor, Trump's phone buzzed on the podium. He glanced at it, smirked, and held it up. "You want truth? I've got something that'll blow this whole room apart." The crowd gasped. What was on that phone? What secret could turn the tide again? All eyes locked on Trump's phone. He waved it high like a weapon, a grin tugging at his lips. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said slowly, "you've heard Bernie cry about responsibility, but what if I told you Charlie Kirk himself didn't blame me? What if I showed you proof?" Gasps spread through the hall. Trump tapped the screen and began to read. "Charlie texted me weeks before his death. He said, 'Mr. Trump, the media is destroying me. The left is smearing me. I don't know how much longer I can fight.'" The room erupted. Some shouted in defense of Trump, others in outrage. It was a dagger pointed straight at Bernie's words. Trump leaned forward, savoring the moment. "You see? It wasn't me. It was you and your allies who broke him." For a second, Bernie stood frozen. The blow was heavy, and even some of his supporters looked shaken. But then, with quiet strength, Bernie stepped toward the podium. His voice was low, but it carried across every corner of the hall. "If that message is real, then it breaks my heart even more. Because it proves exactly what I've been saying. Charlie was trapped in a world of anger. He was drowning. And instead of reaching out a hand, you gave him more battles to fight." The crowd quieted. Trump's smirk faltered. Bernie's words weren't angry, they were mournful. That vulnerability pierced deeper than any attack. And then came the most unexpected twist. The young man from Phase 3, the former Turning Point USA worker, stepped forward again. His voice trembled. "I saw that message too. Charlie showed it to me before he sent it. He said he was begging for help, not for more war. And he told me..." His voice broke. Tears streamed down his face. "He told me he wished Trump would see him as a human being, not just a soldier for politics." The room fell utterly silent. Mothers wept. Fathers hung their heads. Even Trump's supporters stood stunned, the words slicing through partisan lines. Bernie put a hand on the young man's shoulder, his voice cracking. "Charlie's pain is America's pain, and we can't let his death be in vain. We must end this cycle of hate. We must choose compassion over division." The hall erupted, not in anger, but in thunderous applause, raw sobs, and shouts of unity. For the first time, both Democrats and Republicans in the crowd rose to their feet together. Trump tried to speak, but his voice was drowned out. His words, once sharp, now seemed powerless against the wave of emotion flooding the room. He lowered the phone slowly, his expression tight, his silence deafening. Bernie looked out across the sea of faces, his eyes filled with tears. "This is not about left or right. This is about life and death. And I promise you, for every Charlie, for every lost son and daughter, I will fight until my last breath to bring healing to this nation." The room shook with applause, some people openly weeping, strangers hugging each other in grief and hope. And at that moment, America wasn't split red or blue. It was united in sorrow, aching for healing. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Take a moment. Like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you can be part of this journey for truth and healing. Your voice matters. Stay with us.